So wonderful to see everybody here. I am Kelly Sexton. I'm the Associate Vice President for Research, Innovation Partnerships, and Economic Impact here at the University of Michigan. Thank you for joining us as we recognize the inventors driving groundbreaking research and innovation across our campus, and the powerful partnerships with industry, investors, and entrepreneurs that allow us to bring the benefits of Michigan innovation to the world. The University of Michigan's position as a leader for innovation would not be possible without our talented faculty who are constantly pushing the boundaries of knowledge and technology and who work tirelessly to ensure that their work leaves a great mark on our world. Celebrate Invention exists to honor these efforts and the startups, the partnerships, and discoveries that propel our community forward. It was with this appreciation for innovation and impact that the Distinguished University Innovator of the Year award was created. This is the University of Michigan's highest honor for faculty who have developed transformative ideas and helped bring them to market. This year's recipient of the award, Professor Zhong He, exemplifies this spirit, and he will be formally receiving this award later today. Dr. He is a professor of nuclear engineering and radiological sciences in our College of Engineering. His pioneering work in radiation has helped to drive a renaissance in the field, and it has led to the creation of 3 Ann Arbor-based startup companies, each leveraging his platform radiation detection technology to provide novel commercial solutions across different industries. For his extraordinary academic and economic impact, it is my pleasure to welcome Professor He to share an overview of his journey as an inventor and as an entrepreneur. Following his remarks, we will host a panel discussion with him and the CEOs of his 3 startup companies. After that, around 4, we will transition to a networking reception where Professor He will receive his official recognition. For now, please join me in welcoming Professor He to the stage.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, for the kind introduction. I'm very honored by this prestigious award. I want to thank Innovation Partnerships, the award committee for selecting me for this award, and my colleagues who nominated me. I really consider this a recognition to our team. Of course, the team, the first most important member is my family, my wife Yan Meng, who sits there. She has stayed with me and take care of my family and children for decades. I know it's not always been easy. And my daughter Tiffany and son Johnson, who has brought so much joy to our life. My former and current graduate students, some of them sit behind, and my staff members, our collaborators, and government sponsors. In particular, I want to single out the support of Department of Defense Threat Reduction Agency for funding our transition from lab prototypes to field instrument. In particular, Lieutenant Colonel Tom Cartledge, James Howell, Dr. Royal Wood, who is not part of the DTRA, he's really a weapon designer. According to the web, he worked for Edward Teller, if you know Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen weapon. In 2009, he went to the top leadership of DoD and reversed a funding cut decision on our project. And that was a critical help. It enabled us to invest $1 million to produce CZT crystals for security applications. That was a critical move. And of course, more than a dozen program managers over the past 23 years. Somehow, I think it's a miracle that no one cut our project for more than 2 decades. So first, let me introduce how did we get here, how did we start. when people think about gamma ray detectors, gamma rays are the same with optical photon that we can see. The only difference in physics is that one gamma ray photon carries about 1,000,000 times energy of a visible photon. So high-precision germanium detectors has been the gold standard for gamma ray spectroscopy, measuring the energy of the gamma ray, but they require cryogenic cooling to about minus 200 degrees C. And you can imagine how inconvenient it is and how heavy the instrument is, although they actually provide theoretically achievable limit on the measurement of the gamma ray energy. So the search for wide bandgap semiconductor that can be operated at room temperature without cryogenic cooling started more than half a century ago. And, but they encountered the problem of charge trapping. So you can imagine how much government invested in this field for a long, long time. A collaborator of me for more than 10 years and a good friend, Dr. Ludwig Vandenberg, was sent on the space shuttle to grow mercuridide, a type of wide bandgap semiconductors. Only around May of 1985, I searched on the web, only half a year before the Challenger sadly, tragically exploded in January of 1986. So there has been a long journey to explain the problem, why there's so much effort being invested in searching for wide bandgap semiconductors. So on the left, your left, shows a conventional gamma ray sensor, a semiconductor, and you put a cathode anode on both surfaces, you apply the electric field. So when the gamma ray interact with the semiconductor, it generates many pairs of electron holes. The electrons drift to the right, and holes, shown in red here, drift to the left. When the electron holes can both reach their electrodes of collection, remember the holes, the drift of holes is equivalent to the electron drift. It's just in the opposite direction. So if you consider the combined effect of electron holes, does not matter where they both started, it's always the current always flow through the entire device. So it's like a current going to a loop, right? So then we collect the charge and convert the charge to a voltage signal. So the voltage signal is proportional to the number of electron hole pairs, also proportional to the energy of the gamma ray. So the higher the energy, the more electron holes produced. But you can imagine if the holes do not move, only the electron drifted, then the current only drifted part of the detector thickness. And since the gamma ray interact with the device randomly at all depths, if you don't know the depth, there's no way to reconstruct the energy of the gamma ray. So in 1997, actually before that, I proposed idea, this which is shown on the right, we call three-dimensional single polarity charge sensing. Means you read out signal from both surfaces. On the cathode side, which is shown in magenta, is the single electrode, like the conventional readout. The signal is come from the combined drift of electron holes, which is linearly dependent on the drift distance of electrons. But on the right-hand side, instead of a single anode, we use an array of more than 100 pixel electrode. So the effect is that each pixel electrode only sends the charge drift in the vicinity of the electrode in a very short distance, therefore only proportional to the number of electrons arrive on anode surface. So on one side, it's come from the signal from the combined electron holes. On the right, it only depends on the number of electrons. If you know the number of electrons generated by the gamma ray, you also know the number of electron hole pairs, therefore you know the energy. So combined for each gamma interaction, we know energy x, y, z, 3 dimensions, because the electrode is two-dimensional array. So by knowing the 3-dimensional positions and energy depositions of individual gamma interaction, we can recognize how the radiation interacted with our sensor. So this animation was made by Feng Zhang, Dr. Feng Zhang, another giant in our team, that he is always very quiet, so I have to single him out. That when our device works, so this is an illustration of 18 crystals, when the gamma ray hit you can see where the gamma hit in the crystal. The color represents the energy of the energy deposition, and the position, you know where the gamma hit. By the way, this is from the real data, not from AI generated, just to entertain you. So now you can see the straight lines. They are different high energy charged particles, the muons generated in the upper atmosphere by the cosmic rays. When they travel through the device, they generate charges along the track of a straight line. So we can tell. This is what we are showing, we call the event cone. What is the event cone? Since we know the X, Y, Z and energy deposition of each gamma event, so it's like showing here, you know the energy deposition E1 and E2, and you know the location. So you can make a cone with the axis going from the second interaction position to the first interaction location. And then we can calculate in computer the scattering angle theta, which is the half angle of the cone that tipped or topped at the first interaction. So for each gamma event, I'm talking about one photon. You know, when I see someone like Mike sitting in front, how many photons get into my eye? That's a huge number, right? We are talking about one single photon. So you imagine the event cone intersect with the 4 pi solid angle surrounding the sensor, then intersect on a ring, right? So this is from one photon. Then when you detect the second photon, if both photons came from the same radiation source, then the two rings should intersect at where the source is located when you look out in 4 pi. Obviously, the greater number of photons, the more precise you can know where the source is. Typically, with 20, 30 photons, if you come to our lab to see the real-time demonstration, you can see where the source is, right? Then you can overlay the gamma image with a visible optical image, allow the operator to see what our eyes cannot see. This is the gamma ray. So to highlight, one is how good we are in the energy resolution. So what I'm showing is the top black curve, and the magenta were from also the scintillation detector, different type of gamma detectors. The green spectrum, or when I say spectrum, the vertical axis is the intensity of gamma radiation, and the horizontal axis is the energy, all equivalent to the color, if that make people easier to understand. So this we call the spectrum, intensity versus color. Every isotope has a unique signature. You can never mess up because they depend on the nuclear states of the isotopes. Then the top black and magenta are commercial scintillation detectors that actually we are competing, you can say, friendly competing for the market. The green spectrum here is the commercial detector that on the market manufactured by H3D. And the red spectrum, you can see, we can see clearly two green peaks compared with the single magenta peak from scintillation detectors. Then the red spectrum, you can see here, you can see only a shoulder. Here you can see the peaks, another peak. This is the performance that we are doing for the past decade on the university side. And this year, through the innovation partnership, we are transferring the technology from research into H3D. So it's in the process. And the bottom blue spectrum was from the cryogenically cooled high-pressure germanium detector. And you can see we are very close to the cryogenically cooled sensor, but you can hold in your hand. So this is a big deal in terms of operation in the field. So I was talking about identify the isotope, so you know whether that material, the gamma-emitting material, is for nuclear power plants, for research, for medical treatment of patients, or for nuclear weapons, right? So then another unique capability that we made it possible for the first time is the real-time gamma imaging. We did the first demonstration in 2012 in the Fermi nuclear power plant close to the Detroit. Actually, Willy and Wei, they went there in 2012, and you can see this is the optical picture inside the Fermi nuclear power plant, many pipes and equipment. Then you can overlay the gamma image on the optical image. So you can visually see where the radiation is coming from, and also what isotope is responsible for that radiation. So that makes the nuclear workers in nuclear facilities feel much safer because they can see where the radiation comes from, and they can go around to reduce the dose, and also allow them to diagnose problems in the nuclear power plant that are invisible to human's eye. Dr. Willy Kaye, the CEO of H3D, went to Chernobyl in the spring of 2019, and you can see this dome was made to contain the radiation over the exploded reactor made by Soviet in 1986. That was one of the largest, the tragic and worst nuclear disaster ever happened. So if you, he overlay the image onto the optical image, you can see where the radiation comes from. You think from the picture the dome was not that large, but that's because it's hundreds of yards away. So actually, that containment, I remember from the news when I was in undergraduate school, 86. So the dome was built later, but more than $1 billion donated by the European countries, because at that time, Soviet was just too poor to do it. The International Atomic Energy Agency, they bought or purchased more than 100 CZT sensors made by H3D. They have 300 nuclear inspectors going over more than 100 countries every year to make sure that every country has the nuclear material they declared is true to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and also prevent or safeguard the special nuclear materials that could be stolen by terrorists or other groups. So this is the picture that the IAEA showed the new next generation technology to, at that time, the Secretary of Energy of the US, Ms. Jennifer Holm, right? Granholm, also our former governor, showed American technology, so the H3 detector was fit into a gun-shaped device, measurement device to measure the nuclear materials. On the right is the stock in IAEA delivered by H3D. So it's been used by many nuclear inspectors all around the world, going all around the world. Finally, the space exploration is always a fascinating field for us. We're always wondering where we come from and how the universe was evolved till today. The beautiful pictures on the left and the middle were taken by Dr. Sarah Abraham. I don't see her. At the dawn on September 26, 2021, before the balloon launch at the NASA facility. It was a joint project between my university research group and the scientists in Los Alamos National Lab. On the right, it shows the Dr. Daniel Shai at Naval Research Lab and the president of H3D, Dr. Michael Stracker, sitting there. They did the final check on our CZT imager on February 10th of this year at the Kennedy Space Flight Center. At the end, the first three-dimensional precision-sensitive gamma imager was launched by SpaceX to the International Space Station on April 21st of this year, about half a year ago. So this video I took on my iPhone when we were watching the launch from, it's called the Observations Support Building number 2 inside Kennedy Space Flight Center. Let me play this. That's me. You hear the Willy Kaye's voice. We were so awed. Now you start to see the booming sound. As a physicist, you know the speed of sound. You can estimate how far the launch was actually from the building where we were standing. Very exciting to us. It's a lifetime memory. That for our team. That was an amazing experience. Doesn't matter what I say. I think you should have someday watch a real launch of a rocket. That's incredible experience. And that always motivates the team, the people, and us. So I want to give my special thank you to this team of people who had spent 5 years of their PhD study in my research group. They know our technology inside out. They know especially how difficult and the challenges of the technology. Still, I think it's a miracle. They still have confidence in our technology, bet their careers, so I don't take it very lightly. And so they have stayed with H3D, and I'm very grateful to what they have brought to my life. So thank you for listening. Sometimes I ask myself what we have done. Sometimes our company asks this question: what's our mission? What we are doing here? Why we spend our life here? So I think we have done something useful to the safety of our country and our world, in terms of in national security, in nuclear power, energy generation, in environmental protection, and now with the 2 new startups, M3D and MH3D, we start to going into the healthy life of human. And so I think I hope our team member agree with me. We have done something useful to our society. Thank you for your time.
I mean, wow, right? When I was speaking at the beginning about how our faculty inspire us, they push boundaries, they push technology, they push frontiers. It's just really inspiring. And getting to know Professor Zhong He throughout this process has just been truly wonderful. We work with a lot of amazing faculty. This work is incredible, but he's been truly, truly special. And I think you'll understand that better when you have the chance to hear this panel and hear from the 3 CEOs leading his 3 startups. So Professor He, Willy, Xiaopei, Mike, please join us up on stage and we'll have a conversation. Fantastic. The hardest part, I think, for faculty when we ask them to join us and to be recognized in this way is for some who are very and truly humble, like Professor He. It's having being in the spotlight and having all this attention. The second hardest part is to, I think, quickly summarize a career in 10 or 15 minutes casually. So you did an amazing job. Thank you for doing that. So Zhong, as you kind of touched on towards the end, you've got now 3 startup companies. And across the 3, they've created over 50 new jobs and are delivering transformative products. We're going to have a conversation with you, and we're joined by the CEOs of these 3 companies. So I'll start by introducing Willy, and we have some pictures of Willy in younger days behind us, and earlier, really similar. So Willy is the CEO of Zhong's first startup company, H3D, and he's a former graduate student in the Zhong lab, still believes in the technology, staking his career on it. Willy holds a bachelor's degree from Oregon State University and a PhD from the University of Michigan. They're both in nuclear engineering. We're joined as well by Xiaopei Huang. Xiaopei had a distinguished career as a leader in the automotive industry before becoming the CEO of MH3D. Xiaopei holds a master's from U of M in electrical and computer engineering and an MBA from Lawrence Technological University. And finally, over on the very end of the stage, try to lean in, we have Mike Hopkins. Mike brings experience from, leadership experience from Fortune 50 pre-revenue startups to in fields from e-commerce to manufacturing and clean tech. And today, he is the CEO of M3D. Mike holds a bachelor's in economics and an MBA, both from U of M. So Zhong, you started to touch on this at the end of your presentation about the amazing, we heard about the amazing products that have been made by H3D, and now you had made the decision to launch 2 new startups to tackle distinct challenges in the medical field, but both using the underlying radiation detection technology that came from your lab. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about this decision to launch MH3D and M3D as 2 separate companies?
Yeah, thank you for bringing the topic. So it's really, in my view, it's naturally happened. The reason is that we know our core technology is in the security market. You can do something, if you can do something unique, nobody else can do, the government will support you. They know they need the technology. So, but the medical application, we were thinking about, I was thinking about and talking to people long time ago, even before, 20 years ago when we started the technology. So how it started is that we first formed H3D, and over the past decade, we have established ourselves under the leadership of Dr. Willy Kaye and Michael. I truly think he's the leader in this field. It's very hard for any company to compete with us. So as they worked with me for a long time, they know my personality. I don't start things if I feel not very sure this will go somewhere. So we thought about medical, we built some prototypes and let people try, but we have never launched a serious effort because we know the medical companies require much higher investment level. And you have high return and high risk. You need great people to push this into different fields. So we knew our limit. So we waited for more than 10 years until these 2 great people came to us. I would say Mike Hopkins, I think more people know him than us. No, he is very well known. He's an amazing, incredible person. He actually got involved in the very early phase of H3D more than a decade ago. But that's another miracle in my mind. Somehow he still trusts our technology after a decade. After earning enough money, he said, I don't need, I just want to do whatever I want to do. So he came back, and I realized this is the time that we have a spin-off to use the technology but into the medical. And Xiaopei, and actually I should say also mentioned Professor Lingjian Meng, who was my postdoc, then became a professor, had his distinguished career in medical. His funding is from NIH. They have supported him for tens of millions, big programs. So we have been talking about medical, but that is a more mature market. You have to somehow compete with the current technology that require even higher investment and go into a kind of a matured market, but offer something nobody could done before. Then Xiaopei came as her executive experience, combined with Dr. Meng in the specialty in medical imaging, our specialty in detector technology, that we felt that is the time for a 3rd company. So that's how it happened.
Fantastic. Thank you for that overview. So Willy, Xiaopei, Mike, what I'd like to do now is for each of you to give the audience a quick overview of the company you're leading, and to help us really cement in our minds the distinction, if you could summarize your lead product in 3 words at the end. No pressure. Mike, you've got a few minutes to think about this. You're at the end. That would be great. So Willy, we'll start with you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here, see familiar faces, and especially to honor you, Professor He, is well deserved, but I'll answer your question, I promise. So the H3D, which is the first company of yours, what we really focus on is we are trying to deliver, you can think about it technological readiness level. At the university, Professor He is getting it to the point where he proves the art of the possible. And then H3D, we turn it into the practical. We bring it into the field, we get it into the hands of users, warfighters, whatever it may be. It's a very diverse group of people we work with, and that means we can't get too deep into any one market like medical, right? That would be risky to just go all your eggs in one basket, but we look in a lot of different directions for where we're needed. But I was thinking a good way to explain it might be to think of it in terms of 3 phases. And so starting with where we are today, what we're focusing on, the new capabilities we're launching, we're trying to enable other people. So you can imagine taking the technology, boiling it down to the simplest possible module. Like think about Intel. Intel makes a processor. Everybody else makes the motherboard, they make the frame, somebody else makes the monitor. But that processor is really important, right? And so we're trying to go more the Intel model, where we just focus on the thing we're really good at, and then we enable others to go and do great things, right? And so that's where we eventually have gotten to. But I think 2 really important steps along the way was we had to get to the end users first, because if you just come and say, hey, I've got an Intel processor, wouldn't you like to use this processor? The answer is no, because nobody believes it even does anything. It hasn't been, right? So at first, we also had to make the motherboard. We also had to make the chassis. And so those products are still a huge part of our business. And we had some really successful products that did really well commercially, and they basically drive all the future innovation is the revenue we make off the products that we went direct to customers. But I think the third part of our business, that is how we all got started, was Dr. He, as he mentioned, had a lot of support from the US government, paying him to do important things in their mind, in my mind too, and those, hopefully, right? And then a lot of those contracts were able to kind of, they're colored different ways for different levels of maturity. And so we were able to tap some of the higher maturity contracts and basically move a lot of that effort just directly into H3D. So when we started out, most of our business was actually just doing work for other people and getting paid, 7% fee you can get off the government. But then it started to blend in and we started to sell end products. And that was a really big breakthrough. It actually happened quite early. And so we were cash flow positive quite early. And then we're able to drive that revenue, that profit, then allowed us to do the kind of Intel Inside model, where we're really focusing on how to enable other people to use the technology. So that's how I would summarize H3D. And then to answer your follow-up, 3 words, I would say the flagship, so it was the kind where we're hitting the end customer, right? Not the module, but when we're going to the end customer, I would say it would be radiation threat visualizer. That is what we do. If it's some source of a threat of radiation, we visualize it for you.
Radiation Threat Visualizer. I got it. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Willy. Xiaopei.
Hi, I'm extremely excited.
You may need to push it up.
Okay. I'm Xiaopei Huang. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm extremely excited and honored to be in this event celebrating the invention for Dr. He. And MH3D is founded in 2023, 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago. We are developing the next generation SPEC medical imaging system. SPEC is a single photon emission computing tomology. And this system, we started with a preclinical system. The preclinical system has a name called Alpha Spec Mini. Alpha Spec Mini is based on the detector, CZT detector technology invented by Professor He years ago. And this detector technology, we apply this detector technology, has a superior, right now proving out, has a superior energy and resolutions and sensitivities, and also very accuracy in the high quantitative accuracy compared to all the traditional systems. Now, our first preclinical device already launched or implemented in academic leading centers, which supporting advanced academic research, as well as the in advanced drug development, radiopharmaceuticals development, including theranostics. With over 20 years, as Professor He mentioned, with over 20 years, fundamentally research supported by NIH, MH3D is positioned ourselves to be in the medical, to advancing or bring the advanced imaging technology, science and technology into clinicals and hospitals, and to improve millions patients' life. That's our company overview. I use 3 words to describe our first product. revolutionary, only, fast.
Wait, sorry, I'm taking notes. So it was revolutionary
Only?
only?
We're the only one.
Only fast. Okay,
And
revolutionary, only fast. Got it. Thank you so much, Xiaopei. Mike?
Thank you, Kelly, and congratulations, Dr. He. It's been amazing to see such a long journey and how proud that you and your team should be for where we are today. So in contrast to MH3D, the way I describe M3D is instead of a large SPECT imaging machine that might cost the hospital millions of dollars, we're developing small form factor systems that cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so you can think of a radiation safety officer in a hospital that wants to verify shielding, clean up contamination, a spill of radiation, even watch a patient treatment that uses radiation in real time. And then also, surprisingly, that radiation is used in surgery today. And it actually guides surgeons in terms of where to go and what to remove from a patient. And so we are bringing this amazing imaging technology to the operating room. So to answer your question, real-time interoperative imaging.
Real-time, interoperative, one word, imaging. Got it. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So Zhong, you talked about this a bit at the beginning, but about the role of federal research funding in enabling your research, in enabling really the launch of these three companies. So obviously, federal research is an important part of the University of Michigan's research enterprise. It's an important part of our nation's economic prosperity. Could you talk a little bit more about this partnership? Because really, you know, what's been happening is they've been giving you these grants not because they like you, but because they really, really need the solutions that you're able to offer to secure the nation's nuclear safety. As I understand it, your technology has also become the gold standard for the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the symbiotic relationship between federal funding agencies and your labs. And then, you know, Willy, you could talk a bit more about how I think you're actually selling product to some of the same funders and partners. So maybe if you could both kind of tackle that question from your different perspectives.
Yeah, so I think our team has a very unique history because this technology development require very long-term and very intense investment. This cannot be done by a few months of effort. So DTRA has Defense Threat Reduction Agency, if you know the name, that back in June, the 3 Iranian nuclear facilities was bombed. That was behind the DTRA. If I heard the news correctly, they started that project 15 years ago. So this the agency carefully plan strategies to keep our country safe. So obviously, they recognize our technology offer unique capabilities that not available from any other technologies. But that requires long-term investment, both the material production, especially for security applications, and also the electronics. The electronics easy to say, but the noise of electronics, after I worked in this field for 3 decades, I'm still impressed. We can measure, we are talking about noise of a certain number of electrons. We are not talking about micro voltage and nano voltage. We are talking about about 100 electrons drift in a semiconductor. We can sense them pretty accurately. So that requires decades of development and a lot of investment that made the technical barrier very high. So the agency, that's a miracle to me. Over a dozen program managers, somehow we survived. They all believed in this technology, and we have set milestones to reach every 3 years of funding cycle. So they have held our hand and made the resource available. So I really want to acknowledge support of both DOE and especially DTRA. And I give another example to show you how the government helped us. So I think around 2013, that's 12 years ago, the government cannot give a contract just to a company because they have to prevent monopoly, right? So every major project they select competitions. So in 2013, they had open solicitation for building handheld devices. So they selected General Electric, it's a big company, and H3D. At the time, we were very young. We only had maybe 3 to 4 people. So that was we got selected, announced, that got the contract for $2.7 million. You know how much $2.7 million mean to a 4-people company, right? So we were so excited, we celebrated, and they also selected GE. They got a 3.5 or 3.6 million, definitely more than us, then compete. And so the government sent technical audit. We were really very solid, no question. They also sent a financial audit. And that person, I don't know how, made the decision that we were too small to handle this government contract. So she rejected our contract. And we knew that the funding will be cut in a few months. And the Small Business Administration is the third government independent agency evaluated our case, and they said, no, the government have no right to cancel your project. You should ask the money, but you know how our government works, so you never sue your government, especially us. So, but what made us, that was a critical time, whether we just closed down because we have no money, or we had to survive. So in September of, I think it's 2013, if I remember correctly, all our company worked day and night, especially those young people. I still remember this is a great memory. And worked day and night. Fortunately, 3 nuclear power plants bought in this idea. They knew it is something that will help them. So they purchased 4 devices, and each device is about support 1 PhD. And our PhD are expensive, so you know how expensive our technology is. So we survived the whole year until the next gen, the government support kicked in. What I'm trying to say is that they have helped us, held our hand on one side, but there were some people that maybe tried to kill our company, but they helped us also and launched the commercial product. Then from that time, we sold more commercial product than the government contract. So that made our company much more healthy than just rely to deliver national security instruments.
That's an excellent summary. Yeah, to feed on that, Mark Black would always say that if you're going to get over the chasm of death in startup land, you need to build a bridge. And the government is only one plank on that bridge. So don't count on a single plank to hold a bridge up. And that definitely turned out to be sound advice. And it was his agency that actually got that contract from us. So excellent and insightful advice. Another thing I want to clear up is your comment about, that Professor He is getting this money not because people like him, but because of his excellent technology. So, okay, true, but both. Okay, so I want to say that generally, people do like Professor He.
We all like Professor He.
Yeah, we all like Professor He. And more than that, I actually have a point, not just trying to be silly, which is that I think that if you look at 23 years getting money from the same, we're talking about the federal government, the worst customer on earth, okay? And 23 years, almost that many program managers, and every single one of them continued to give him money. And it wasn't just like signing the same contract over and over again. It was coming up, but there was times when the universities were not supposed to get funding directly from this agency. They had this whole consortiums they set up. There weren't even supposed to be direct contracts. They were completely canceled, and they did an end around, and they figured out how to get him money. And that level of commitment, if you think about any relationship that has that kind of commitment, that commitment has to be there on both sides, right? And so Dr. He has always taken that money very, very seriously and always felt deeply indebted to perform, right? And I think that's why he's continued to have the success, because they know they know his tech is good, but they know he's going to perform, and that's a big deal, and that comes back to integrity. But if I were to actually talk about it, how does it affect our company in a dollars and cents way? You're talking about 2 things: non-dilutive capital, right, to do R&D. And usually what the government wants is also what you want to do, so that's a heck of a lot easier than raising investor money, right? It's just when they'll give it to you, the government gives you money and you do that. That's great. But the other thing is sunk cost fallacy, because as you pointed out, a lot of these people who invested in Professor He also end up being our customer, right? And so imagine if instead of just like buying a car, you first had to invest $1 million into designing a car, and you invested $1 million into Ford, you're probably not buying a Toyota, okay, right? Like you're probably buying a Ford because you're already $1 million deep, so now you're going to just buy the car. And It's both ways. I don't like to think of it as like, they're stuck with us, ha ha ha. But I do think of it like I don't want them stuck with somebody else, right? Because once that flywheel of government spending gets spun up, it is what it is. And so by Dr. He getting his foot into so many doors and then H3D continuing to open those doors, when it comes down to acquisition cycle time, then it is very good for us. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. So Mike, I'd like to turn to you now. And before I get to your question, I want to share a fun fact. So we had a lot of fun, if you can't tell, like getting to know Dr. He through this process, but also getting to know the panelists. So I learned in the run-up to today that Mike actually, it's kind of was hinted at earlier, first met Dr. He and Willy in Professor David Brophy's famous Financing Technology Commercialization class about a decade ago. And so they stayed in touch over the years, and that really paved the way for this opportunity to now have this phenomenal CEO leading this really great company. So for those of you, it doesn't sound like there's anyone who doesn't know Professor Brophy, but if there's anyone here, you should know that he's a legend in venture capital and private equity, and that we have so many amazing startups that can trace their roots to his amazing class. So we're fortunate to have Professor Brophy with us today. So thank you for coming, and thank you for your many, many years of partnership and all that you've done to move this ecosystem forward. Thank you, Professor Brophy. All right, so Mike, your question. So M3D's Raven camera is already improving radiation safety in clinical settings. I think the 3 words were real-time interoperative imaging. Did I get that?
That's for our flagship product, but
okay.
You did get the words right.
Okay, all right. So it's already in hospitals, already being used, you're selling product. Like, this is the other thing I love about these 3 companies. They're all selling product. Could you walk us through how the hospitals are adopting Raven, and then dive into your vision for the future of M3D?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't had cancer, you often hear radiation. You might think of weapons or power plants, but it's a critical part of cancer treatment. And it could be used to image or diagnose cancer, but it also can be used to treat. And actually what we're seeing in healthcare is there's a renaissance in using radiation with a new set of drugs that are much stronger, longer half-life to treat cancer. And they're actually really successful with a lot less side effects compared to chemotherapy. And so, like we were talking about, timing is often so important in life, and just as these new drugs have come on market, the tools needed for safely administering them really don't get the hospitals where they need to today. And so now bringing this game-changing technology that can image in real time and help them clean up and see how the administration is going in real time. And so that's really what we envision. The real-time interoperative camera is surgeons actually do use radiation to guide them when they're looking for lymph nodes and cancer to remove. And all they have is a Geiger counter. It kind of ticks like a metal detector, where our camera, using the CZT technology in real time, can actually show the surgeons where the lymph nodes and the cancer is that they're looking for. In fact, just last week we did our first patient where they actually injected the patient with radiation, and using the CZT technology, we're able to show in real time where the lymph nodes were in the patient that they were looking for.
That's awesome. Thank you, Mike. So Xiaopei, could you tell us a bit about what inspired you to step into the role of the CEO of MH3D and talk about your vision for the future of your company?
First, like to see how I met with Professor He. I was introduced to Professor He nearly 3 years ago, and by a mutual friend. At the time, I spent, as the introduction mentioned, I spent over 20 years in automotive industry. And when I met Professor He, I was really impressed by few things Professor He shared with me. First is his invention on the technology, on the radiation detector technology. Secondly, I'm very impressed by the success of the H3D company. And third, most importantly, I'm very inspired by his vision and his passion in launching this technology into detection technology into medical field to help people for early cancer and other tough disease detection. And he had that belief and passion even before this technology applied to it. So this inspiration inspired me, also resonate in me, align in my vision and for the company too. That's how I'm really pleased. We decide, with a very short time, we decide to move forward on, and H3D co-founded this company, MH3D. And the name of the MH3D is H3D with M starting, means medical for MH3D technology. The company have a very clear plan when we started this company. I can see clearly, shortly, in 2 steps plan. First step is preclinical product. Second step is in the clinical expansion and translation of the preclinical product into the clinical field. Bring this technology into hospitals, clinics, and to helping people. So in this process, we realize they try to advancing in addition to the advanced technology we mentioned earlier, that including the hardware innovation and software innovation. We realize we also need a clear strategy by building a clear strategy in reimbursement strategy, helping to this, really helping both patient and provider, medical provider, for utilize this the device. So our first focus is to focus on the device, on the human device, on specific part of the body, a dedicated, on organ dedicated scanner. And not only still keep the technology, the few words I mentioned before, and also make this product more compact as well as portable, and therefore make it accessible to the clinic easier, affordable, and scalable. So with this plan and a clear vision and plan, we started development, design already, and we already have a pre-submission to FDA process. We expecting our plan onto FDA clearance within next year, and launching this product and helping worldwide people, patients, in 2027.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So Willy, we've heard about H3D. So what I'd like to hear from you next is, so when you started this journey, you were a graduate student in the Zhong Lab, and today you're CEO. Could you talk about what that transition was like for you, and can you think of advice that you'd give to any PhDs or postdocs we may have here with us today who are aspiring towards an entrepreneurial path?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Thanks for that question, and happy to talk about like how what I've learned as I've gone through this, because it's certainly not easy. I'll say one thing that's really important about thinking about like leading or taking an important role in a company, is to focus on what you're actually good at. Took me a long time to learn that lesson. I just wanted to do everything myself. I wanted to work 120%. I mean, when I came into your group, Professor He, I wanted to be Feng, who is our CTO and the most brilliant person I probably met in my life, and was never able to reach that standard. But I did have the gift of gab, and so I was able to sell things, and was decently good at connecting the dots when a bunch of different people were doing work and bring them all together. But the point is, I always have taken an approach through my whole professional life where I know there's some things I'm good at, maybe not as good as other people, pretty good. But there's a lot I don't know, and you gotta surround yourself with people who know them a lot better than you, which is why Mike and I go way back to the Brophy days, and we would go and we would have breakfast when you'd be back in town, because you were in Seattle for a long time there, and you'd be back in town, we'd find an excuse, and he would give me advice that just never would have crossed my own mind, right? And just, recognizing that you can't be good at everything, you need to surround yourself with the right people. And another thing I'd have to call out is that when we got started, we had no idea what we were doing. And this university has a lot of really good resources. I'll call out the Mentor in Residence program. Nick Cuccinelli in particular, got to give him a shout out. He also provided a lot of advice, a lot of education in those early days. So you do need to do a lot of things yourself. I was the company plumber for a while there, and we shared our office with a tree company that would come in and ruin that toilet. And so I had a daily unplugging of the toilet, and so you do have to toil, okay? Don't get me wrong, but, make sure you leverage other people who are very skilled. And the other thing I would say is, as advice, is that it's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna go quickly. It's not going to just overnight you sell and you're super rich. But as you go through it, there are indications you're on the right path. And so I keep tying things back to relationships, but say that you have somebody that you're romantically interested in. It's probably not gonna go from they're not interested, they don't wanna talk to you, they're not interested, they give you the cold shoulder, and then they ask you to marry them, right? That's generally not how these things work. And so when you look at how the company started, there was lots of struggle. It was not easy to do what we did. And it was a long time before I could rest knowing I would get paid, if I, like now I know even if I screw up, I'm still gonna get paid, right? But in the early days, when there's only 3 or 4 of us, we had to make our, right? But along the way, there are so many signs that we're going in the right direction and encouraging things, signs that this is a good idea. And pay attention to those signs. And if you aren't seeing those signs, pivot. And we had to pivot, right? There are times when we had to change strategies and like going to making modules and enabling other people. That was a huge pivot of the company. So my advice would just be rely on the people around you, rely on the resources around you, and don't expect it to happen overnight, but don't just sit there and toil away for years without any indication you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Willy. Zhong, I know you have the pleasure of working with my esteemed colleague, Dick Greeley, who's here with us. Dick's an associate director on our licensing team with our physical sciences portfolio. And he has an amazing ability to pull new innovations and new startup companies out of our academic labs. And Dick's famous for how he does this because it's really simple. At the end of any meeting with a faculty member, he asks, "What else are you working on?" So Zhong, the final question today is for you. What else are you working on? And will there be a 4th startup company?
Yeah, so for people that know me well, worked with me for more than 1 or 2 decades, I'm very cautious. So to me, I hope our team see this. We are just still at the beginning of it. We are not nearly at where we could take in the market. So it takes, I know it's taken about more than a decade, but I think the market and the user base will keep growing. It takes time. The technology takes a long time to develop. And I see the sign that now government agencies still drive our technology even further. As you can see, the world situation is not more peaceful than a decade ago. The Iran, the North Korea, Russian invasion of Ukraine. So you felt some satisfaction when our sensors were delivered to Ukraine nuclear power plants last year. So you are doing something useful. So I think if you ask what I'm going to do, I think I know my limit, so I do what I can do to help 3 companies to grow bigger. I think it's a new mission, really, to the next phase. If the hospitals can widely use and our sensor can be much more widely deployed in the government, in the world, and also for surgery operations by M3D, that to me would be a dream life that I'm very happy with.
That's a great answer. So folks, we've heard some great stories today about an amazing faculty member, inventor, 3-time startup founder who's created this world-leading radiation detection technology that is the gold standard globally and has been quietly producing and shipping products from the flagship company H3D for years from here in Ann Arbor. Like, this is a wonderful Ann Arbor story. And I'm so excited about the future prospects for MH3D and M3D as they open up this technology into medical markets. So my ask for everybody here in this room is help us tell this story. Find one way to help support these companies and their efforts to grow and scale these businesses here. My second ask is that you please join me in a round of applause and stay and join us for the networking reception that's going to be in the Rogel Ballroom. All right, thank you so much.